Oh, there we go. I've got 11 o'clock on my phone, so okay, we'll give it a go. Right. Thank you very much. Right, so welcome to this event. I'm Richard Harris. I'm from the University of Nottingham, and we are here to talk about live events. We're not going to talk massively about the technical nounou. There's a technical term for you, nounou. The technical nounou around live events, but what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about people. Regardless of what we think in IT, people are what makes things happen and also not happen. So there's some things that live events does well and things where it could be a little bit better, but we're mostly going to talk around how we can make a difference as people. So, okay, so in this session, we're going to talk about the approach that we took. And I'm going to use this, you'll hear this phrase from me quite a lot, which is rightly or wrongly. So this is what we did. It's not for us to say, this is what you should do. It's not to say that we're awesome and you're not. Absolutely not going to say that at all. That would be A, rude, and B, judgmental. But we're going to share what we did. And if you can learn from that, so lessons learned, great. If we can help you avoid some pitfalls, fantastic. That's really cool. And then we'll also talk at the end around what we might be doing next and seeing how things might change in future. Okay, so I'm going to ask you politely, if you could leave your questions towards the end of the session and just put your hand up, use the raise hand function in Teams. Feel free to ask anything that you want, except sports, please. I don't really understand sport, but do ask a question around live events and we'll see where we go. We do have to run to time, but my email address is in the presentation should you need to get in touch later on. Okay, so let's dive in. So, live events inside Teams has, well, currently, it's been extended to be 50, but your usual A3 license would give you a maximum of 15 concurrent live event sessions. Fantastic. A couple of months ago, Microsoft were very kind and they decided that during the COVID-19 situation, they would give the live event system to A1 customers, which caught us, we were A1 customers at that time, that caught us a little bit by surprise. And we realized that if you've got 15 car parking spaces, that's kind of how we explain it to everyone. When you've got, well, we've got 9,000 staff, only half of them use a computer on a daily basis. The other half tend to be cleaners, gardeners, and, coffee shop workers and everything. They don't tend to be using email very frequently. We've got upwards of 33,000 students. If we just let this straight out and let people do what they want, that's a very big number into a very small car park. So we took a bit of a cheeky decision and we shut it off. And the idea was rather than letting it be a free-for-all, because the issue you get is you don't know how many people are going to be in the car park until you roll up at the front gates. And when you go, I'd like to park, please, the system goes, no, it's full. That's probably not the message you want if you're the VC and you've organised something, or if you've organised a lecture for, say, 300 students. Probably not something you want. You want a decent sort of quality of service around that. So we decided to change things a little bit. So we have inside the University of Nottingham what's called an Office 365 product team, or the 365 product team, and it's a collection of individuals from various areas of the IT department, or IS as we're called. And we work in a very agile mechanism. So we don't tend to have a long-term roadmap where we say this month it's this, next month it's that. A lot of it is quite reactive because Microsoft changes things in 365 quite frequently. The arrival of live events was a surprise. There was no tip-off in the blogs about that. And we do read up on that. So we try to kind of stay with things as best we can. The approach we also take is we're very people focused. We do the technology and we do help people adopt the technology and understand and use it, and we make changes to it. But we always look at it from, what does this mean to the person in the street? What does this mean to a student or a researcher or an academic or even someone who's visiting? Like an event like today, what does the release of live events, how does that change this? So we take that approach. The other thing we do is we have, if you pardon the lingo, we use the phrase a starter for 10. So what is a starter for 10? Those of you of a certain age will remember University Challenge from the first time round. But a starter for 10, we say, let's get something out of the door. Rather than sort of have it in development where it's constantly being worked on, but no one sees anything, We take the approach that getting something out of the door is better than nothing. So a starter for 10 is, this is what we think it looks like. Let us know. How could it be better? And we like feedback. We encourage people to give feedback in the route of, it would be better next time if ... And we look for evidence, inference, and impact. So why is it? Why do you feel that way? Why does that? Why would the font, a larger font, help us, as opposed to I don't like it? But that's not really feedback. That's just effectively noise. So we try to encourage people to do that, and a starter for 10 encourages it. The other thing about a starter for 10 is this approach that you're saying it's not going to be perfect, but what it is it's something that's here now, and we're going to make it better. We're here to listen, and we're here to change it, and we're here long term. So that's what it means to people, and that's what it means to us. And that fits in with the last part, which is the coaching mindset, which is, if this is what we would like as an organization and as a team and as individuals inside the university, how do we get people from, I've never used it and I would like to use it, how do we get there? What will it take? And we will ask open, or perhaps to use the technical phrase, clean questions. For this to happen, what needs to happen next? For this to happen, what needs to happen before? And we took that coaching approach to the heart of what we call our virtual broadcasts team to get live events going. So the live events service, if you could call it that, is staffed by a group of volunteers from various areas of the IT department, and including some folk who are from a more media-centric background. And we've listened to their experiences and what they've done previously in other jobs, and we've used that to influence the things that we do. So of that, one of the things we do is we have a SharePoint communication site that explains the basics, but it doesn't talk about live events, not until right at the end. What it talks about is, it says, these are the things the university can do from a broadcast perspective. You can use something called Echo 360, or Engage as we call it, which we do for lectures, and that plugs into our Moodle environment for teaching. You can do a Teams meeting, you can do a live event, but it doesn't name those directly. What it does instead is it says, I am a lecturer and I need to reach my students for a lecture. And you would say, if this is you would probably want to use technologies A and B. And if you choose A, your experience will be like this. And if you choose B, your experience will be like that. It's not to say that A is better than B. It's merely to state the facts that A is a choice and B is a choice, and you can make an informed decision. And you can go through all of those. And if you need to talk to an expert, because we've pulled people in from different teams into this virtual broadcast situation, it means that if you go, I'm thinking of doing this thing, but I don't quite know what the right answer is, then you can talk to someone and they can listen to you, which is really important. And you can ask those questions and you can say to them, what is it you'd like to do? What are you hoping to achieve? Who's your audience? Who's coming? Is it external people? Is it students? Do you need audio feedback? Do you just want to do a television broadcast? Do you need a moderated chat? You can do all those things, and that leads you to the right thing. Now, going back to live events, one of the things that really helps is this concept of a storyboard. So a storyboard, what we say is, if you need to have a live event, having a rough running order, so let's say it was a 45-minute broadcast, you would say, okay, who's going to introduce it? Who are they handing over to? Are you doing any slides? What happens after that person's finished talking? And the storyboard doesn't have to be fully detailed. It could just be an email with, you don't need timings. It could be Jane will lead, and then Jane will hand over to Mike. Mike will hand over to Ashraf. Ashraf will hand over to Sue, and round we go. And that's all we need. And it might be that through the concept of a storyboard, someone says, well, actually, we need to have some PowerPoint. Okay, who's going to control the PowerPoint? And that leads us down to the right route in terms of getting the content in the right place, in the right way, so that people can share that and make that happen. So onboarding. So when you use a live event, live events has kind of three roles, give or take. You've got your viewers, so your viewing public, they just need a web link, Teams client, off they go. They just get to watch and they can ask a question. That's fine. Your next level is, and it's not a hierarchy, your other zone is your presenters. And your presenters, it tends to be like a Teams meeting in the same way that we're in right now, but you can only have the camera, so to speak, on one individual at any one time. Those presenters can be inside your organization and outside. However, they need to be invited using their email account. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. You'll notice the little green devil in the corner where it says 365 IDs. For the majority of people, their email address matches their 365 ID. So I'm richard.harris@nottinghamacuk, which is my email, and that happens to be exactly the same as my Office 365 ID. Fantastic. If someone sends me a live event request to be a presenter, I will click the link, I will go straight into the system, and it'll be fine. We had a few organisations, and I'm not naming and shaming, we had a few organisations, a few universities, where they decided that the person's 365 ID would not match their email. Now that's a problem, because live events is a bit fussy. Live events likes you to have, so if you're inviting Fred Smith at University of blah, when it sends that invitation to fred.smith at University of blah, if that ID is really FB62 at Uni of blah, that's not, from a live events point of view, the same person. So Fred receives an email, he's got an invitation, he clicks the link, the system then goes, who are you? And his 365 goes back, I'm FB62 at University of blah. The system looks at its guest list and goes, well, you're not a producer according to me, so not a producer, presenter, sorry. I'm going to make you a viewer. And they get lobbed in with the viewing public, and now they can't present. So we had to sort that out. So onboarding is a really useful activity. So what we do when someone wants to book an event is we say, well, we're going to need a volunteer. We're going to need someone to host the PowerPoint. You're going to need your speakers. You're going to need to do your storyboard. If you've got any external people coming in, we're going to need to do an onboarding exercise. What works best for that is if we add them to a team, so that creates a guest account in our system. It also means we can look at their identity, so we're not assuming anything, going back to that smiley face at the bottom. We can look at that and we can go, well, we can get in touch with Fred, but, and the rehearsal part is key, during the rehearsal, Fred couldn't join. Right, it might mean that we need to do an onboarding meeting. So we have initial discussion. We talk about the storyboarding during that initial discussion. We talk about their needs. We do the onboarding if you've got any external things. So we're assuming nothing. We always do a rehearsal. It doesn't have to be a full dress rehearsal, but I would say doing the onboarding and doing the rehearsal makes it easier on everyone. If you try and do all of that in 5 minutes before going live, your stress levels are going to go through the roof. And we've done 1 or 2 live events where the first time, I think it was the first time we did it, where we had colleagues, where we'd invited them in from outside the university, they couldn't join. And that then meant that the storyboard, we just had to kind of just wing it, and someone had to go and do somebody else's slides. So it's not on here, but in order to join a live event, you need to be using the Teams software. And that needs to be either on a Windows device or a Mac. I can't comment about the Teams environment on Linux. I don't think it's supported. We need to check that. But it's certainly not supported on a mobile phone. And without putting that information in front of people, people go, well, I can join a Teams meeting on my mobile. Great, I can join a Teams meeting in the web client. So why can't I join a live event? You can't. The software doesn't work like that. So it's about getting that information out. So I've mentioned the 365 IDs. Pre-recorded video. According to the official Microsoft documentation, I could load a video up onto my computer right now. I could share that using the audio function. Excuse me, I'm trying not to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. I could then share that using system audio and it would play through the system. When we experimented with that, we found that the audio and the video would become sort of decoupled quite quickly, and then the person's lips would be moving, but the sound would be somewhere else. We wondered if it was us. We thought it was the network. We did all the sort of checking we did, people working from home, blah, blah, blah. We did all of that stuff. Eventually, we flagged it with Microsoft, and they said to us, yes, it's something we advertise, but we don't have a lot of confidence in it, which we found surprising. And it's with no judgment towards them, it feels as if they've released the feature, going back to that concept of a starter for 10. It feels as if they've released that feature and it will get better. But right now, our experience is try not to use pre-recorded video, particularly fast-moving, glossy, sort of PR type things. Those don't seem to go very well. Apparently, it's to do with how Teams sends the information from the client up to the team servers in Microsoft. The video goes one route and the audio goes the other route. The purpose of this is that the audio is deemed to be a priority because it's more important for you to hear a person's words than to see them nodding and doing all this, which is fine in a regular meeting, but in a kind of production sort of broadcast event, that's not what we want. So instead, we've changed our approach and we've said, if you're going to have a situation where you've got a lot of recorded video, maybe not doing a live event is the right thing to do. Maybe you actually just create a pre-recorded video for the whole thing, glue it all together, give yourself plenty of time, and on the day, release that video and say, at 9 o'clock, we're going to have this guest lecture, which you're welcome to watch. And then at 11:30, we'll have a live Q&A, which you can sign up for. And that kind of mixed blended approach is something that's new to a lot of people, but people are getting their head around it and they're starting to approach that. What can work quite well for the pre-recorded video is using PowerPoint and narration, because that doesn't tend to have a person's visible and their lips moving. That's less of an issue. Okay, so remote control. Remote control, if you are getting colleagues from other universities or other areas who aren't part of your organization, having good remote control software is really, really valuable. So we've been using the built-in, I think it's called Windows Assist, which is built into Windows 10. What's really cool about that is that, firstly, it's built in on a lot of Windows 10 devices. That's fine, we can just use that, and it will also use your Office 365 ID. So if I was trying to control your computer with your, obviously with your permission, then I can send you that and it will come from my email address, so you know it's from me, you know it's legitimate, and it only operates in the time that I'm running it. It doesn't install anything on your computer, so your data's never at risk. If you've got colleagues who are using a Mac, that's not going to work. You're going to have to look at an alternative system, maybe using Teams, but that can be tricky if they can't get into Teams properly. So you might end up using things like BombGuard or TeamViewer or other things like that. But that's a Macintosh area. My knowledge is a bit shaky, but it's doable. But it fits in with the onboarding, which is about giving yourself enough time to get people in a good place so they're ready to go for the rehearsal. And we've already spoken about assuming nothing, but really it's not to think, don't think on what's the worst that could happen, but more thinking that it's hoping for the best and planning for the worst. So we're definitely going to do a storyboard. We're definitely going to do onboarding because that helps people get into a good place. And we're certainly going to do a rehearsal. And we do all those things to give us confidence as people that by the time it comes to the big event, that we're all good to go. All the technical issues have been solved, the social issues have been solved, the practicalities have been dealt with. We work through it. And the more we can do, we've been a bit cheeky and we've said, give yourself 8 working days between your event and getting in touch. That seems like a long time. True, it probably does feel a bit like a lot of time, but to try and squeeze in storyboarding, onboarding, and rehearsals between, say, now and tomorrow, it's doable, provided everybody can drop everything. But staff have other commitments, And that is a lot of emotional heavy lifting to try and squeeze in. So we're trying to push into the people's thoughts the idea that start early. And we're starting to see people get in touch now saying, I've got an event in 3 months. My event's in 6 months, but I need, X, Y, and Z to help that happen. So that's going the right way. Okay. So what's next for the product team? So we launched this in the summer, and we've done it on a volunteer basis. What we think we need to do now is we need to formalize things a little bit more. So the volunteering worked an absolute treat. We managed to work out who had particular skills, where they could help us, what we could learn from them. And I mean that learn collectively. So we're kind of we're all going up, we're all building up on others people's success. I know that might sound a bit cheesy, but it does actually work. We've listened to feedback from people on how things could be done differently. It's not always been a comfortable ride. We have had situations where communications are has not gone as well as we would have liked, and that's led people into some not a dark place, but less than ideal. We had some colleagues who decided that they would create a series of videos and they wanted to play the videos through the system, and we fed back saying, well, you can do that, however, this is the risk if you do. And that message was lost somehow. And when they then carried on doing what they wanted to do, it didn't work as well as they would like, and they had a bit of a rough ride. They coped, but it was not how we would have liked it as an institution. It could have been better. So that feedback thing is important, and it kind of goes both ways. And it's not we're going to tell you what to do. It's more, it goes really well when we do this. We being everybody working together. It is a team effort. You need your producers and your presenters to work together to produce something that works really well. We're going to update our SharePoint site because that's the thing that we point people to, and it's full of stories. It's all about how people behave. And rather than you filling out a form where it kind of just disappears into the ether, what we've done is we've linked that with the Microsoft booking system, and we've got a little series of badges down the bottom of the screen that says, excuse me, my name's Terry, my expertise is in X, Y, and Z. My name's Richard, mine is in A, B, and C. And there's a little link on there where you can click that and you can get, 20 minutes, half an hour to discuss things. Because that lets people talk to people. It stops information being sort of stuck in an email or thrown into a support system where it just sits and it gets chucked around. It goes directly to the people who can do stuff, can sort of hold people's hands and get them there. And that's going to lead us into staffing the service. We're going to improve how we do the availability, because onboarding people and running rehearsals, there is an impact in time. Yes, it makes the events run really well, but there's a cost, and that cost is staff time. We are not currently charging people for this. We want people to use the technology. We want people's behaviors to change and improve. So we're not currently charging. That might alter in the future. Whether you charge or not, that's up to you. All I would say is consider the impact of that decision. If we do that, what happens next? Might it push people towards using Zoom because they feel that it's okay to use that? And for some organizations it is, and for some organizations it isn't. But the key part really is keeping listening to your colleagues and finding out what is it they need from the service. Are we getting a lot of feedback saying we're using technology A and we're finding it doesn't quite do this? Okay, well, let's acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge that the system doesn't do that and go, is it likely to change? Is there anything we can do around the information that we provide? Other alternatives? If we chose technology B, would that be a better fit? Maybe it would. So that kind of covers where we are. And that brings me towards the end of this presentation. If you have any questions, may I ask that you just raise your hand and then come off mute, and we'll deal with them as required. My email address is at the bottom down here. It's richard.harris@nottinghamacuk. Right, I'm going to stop sharing. And if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand.